European media have just reported that car manufacturers all across Europe have begun increasing the price on their internal combustion engine vehicles, on their diesel-powered vehicles, on their gasoline, petrol-powered vehicles. Prices are going up all across Europe. Now, they say this is because next year, if they don't do this, if they don't sell more electric cars, they're going to have to pay Tesla billions of dollars and pay other car companies, pay carbon credits billions of dollars if they don't sell more EVs. So they're trying to discourage people from buying their petrol and diesel powered cars. But there's a lot more to this story. There's actually another potential reason for this increase in prices in Europe. Hello, my friends. Welcome to the channel. I'm Sam Evans. You're watching the Electric Viking. Great to have you with us. Profits from companies like Stellantis, the Volkswagen Group, Europe's biggest manufacturers, Porsche, Mercedes-Benz profits are falling. That is a fact. Production of their vehicles in Europe, it's expensive. It's much more expensive than where rival vehicles are made, which is, of course, in China. Now, there will be next year changes to the European Union's CO2. If each car emits too much CO2, car manufacturers will have to pay fines. The head of the French Automotive Union said this: "At some point, enough is enough. I cannot sell enough electric vehicles and I'm going to be penalized on my thermal vehicles." Thermal vehicles, okay. What do they want me to make? Horse-drawn carriages? Obviously, the French automotive industry is in basically shambles as well. Their sales are falling pretty damn fast. The French government is trying to prop them up, to support them. It's not really working though. Starting in the new year, the European Union will drastically tighten its regulations on automotive carbon dioxide emissions. It's not just about carbon dioxide emissions though. This is about the particles coming out of the exhaust in diesel and petrol powered cars in Europe and all around the world that they now know do kill you. They cause cancers, they cause all kinds of illnesses, premature death. So they're trying to reduce those emissions. So even if you don't believe global warming is an issue, it's much more than just about that. From the 1st of January 2025, the EU will enforce a much stricter cap on emissions, requiring the average CO2 emissions per kilometre for each new car sold by a manufacturer to not exceed 93.6 grams. This means emissions from vehicles need to be 20% lower next year than they were this year. According to consultancy firm Dataforce, under the new emissions measurement system, the 2024 target equates to 116 grams per kilometre versus the previous system of calculation. Anyway, the point is, cars next year have to be 20% more efficient. Now, it's impossible for them to do this. There's nothing that manufacturers in Europe can do other than lie about their emissions, and they've been caught doing this many times. Ford's been caught, Mercedes has been caught, BMW's been caught, the Volkswagen Group's been caught. So I think they're going to give up on trying to go down that route. And the only choice that means they have is to sell more electric cars. The regulation doesn't prescribe specific method to achieve a reduction in CO2 emissions at the fleet level. Now, this is at the fleet level, average per manufacturer. But it effectively forces major car manufacturers to ensure that at least 20% of their sales come from EVs, zero emissions vehicles. I mean, they could sell hydrogen vehicles if they wanted to, but obviously no one's buying those. This marks a significant increase in the current average of 13%. So this year, so far, 13% of all cars were fully electric in Europe. Now, the European Union requires 20% to be fully electric from each manufacturer. As Reuters reports, manufacturers that fail to meet these targets will face huge fines. The alternative is to do what they've been doing for years. Buy carbon credits from companies like Tesla. Tesla will make around $2.4 billion in the sale of carbon credits to companies like Stellantis because these companies are way below hitting these targets, these numbers. In fact, Tesla has made, I believe, around $11 to $12 billion from the sale of carbon credits. Most of that has come from their competition from other automakers. In response, automakers have started increasing the prices of their gasoline and diesel vehicles to reduce demand for internal combustion engine models and make EVs more appealing. That's what they say anyway. Now, they could have gone a different route. Instead of increasing the price of their diesel and petrol powered vehicles, they could decrease the price of their EVs. Maybe make them, say, 30% more expensive than similar EVs in China. 30% more. I mean, that's fair, right? But they're not. In most cases, they're around double the price. Still very expensive, and it doesn't make sense. Carmakers have started with their pricing strategy to steer demand towards EVs in order to reach the CO2 targets and avoid potential fines, said Beatrix Keim of the Centre for Automotive Research for Reuters. Companies such as Stellantis, Volkswagen Group, and Renault have already increased the prices of internal combustion engine models by hundreds of euros in recent months. For instance, all Peugeot model prices sold in France, except EVs, saw price increases last month, every single model. According to S&P Global Auto analyst Denise Shimoul, these adjustments could also help fund future discounts for EVs, which haven't happened yet. Now, guys, is it possible these increases in prices are actually more about the fact these companies are losing money now? They're in trouble. They know it. Stellantis knows they're in trouble. They just fired their CEO for a reason. The Volkswagen Group, I'm sure you all know about all the crazy stuff going on there. Porsche, same problem. 42% fall in revenue for Porsche. Unbelievable numbers. Mercedes-Benz numbers are falling as well. I mean, is there potentially a reason for this that just comes down to pure profiteering? Maybe. Over the next year, Europe will see the launch of several new and more affordable EVs, including the Hyundai Insta, the Fiat Grande Panda, the BYD Seagull, the Cupra Raval, the Renault R5, the Skoda Epic, and the Volkswagen ID.2. But all of them will still be much more expensive than they cost in China. Other EVs, though, priced below 25,000 euros, about 26,000 US dollars, are also in development, like the Renault Twingo, the Kia EV2, and the Volkswagen ID.1. Now, of course, if the European Union didn't have massive taxes on Chinese EVs, then they would flood the market. You'd be able to buy very, very good Chinese EVs. They are very good. Doesn't matter what people say. Bogans who are uneducated from Australia will tell you they're rubbish, but that's not true. They could buy those for prices well below the price of all these European EVs. But obviously, Europe doesn't want that to happen because they're concerned about losing their automotive industry. Not everyone is on board with the EU's tightening of emissions regulations. At the Paris Auto Show in October, Luc Chatel, president of the French car lobby, slammed them. He says they're unfair, they're ridiculous, they're a disgrace, and he would prefer to keep on breathing in toxic fumes. He said he likes them, and every day he goes near an exhaust and he tries to breathe in the fumes. He loves the aroma. No, he didn't say that, but that's pretty much what he's saying. The guy's a clown. This year, 13% of all vehicles sold across the EU have been electric. Many politicians are pushing the region to relax its targets for 2025. They say this is unfair. If the sector fails to meet its CO2 obligations, fines could soar as high as 15 billion euros or 15.7 billion US dollars. Some automakers have found alternative strategies to avoid fines, such as pooling emissions with other brands, like Tesla. For example, Suzuki will pool emissions with Volvo in 2025, so it doesn't have to pay big fines in Europe. Despite these efforts, skepticism remains, says carscoops.com. A source close to one of Europe's major automakers told Reuters that simply raising internal combustion engine prices is not enough to drive EV sales, citing weak growth in the EV segment. Remember, guys, EVs haven't really improved that much in Europe. They are improving, but not anywhere near as much as Chinese EVs. So if they want to drive demand, I think what they need is better prices. Do what China's doing. Reduce the prices. In China, EVs are the same price as internal combustion, and the range of them is improving. The charging speed is improving. They need that. If that were to happen in Europe, I don't think they need to do anything. Those things would be enough. As the market faces both political and economic pressures, 2025 could be a turning point for the region's automotive industry. Some of these manufacturers are definitely struggling. I mean, we're talking about potentially the inability to repay, to meet their debt obligations. Huge debt balloons for Nissan are required. I mean, the Nissan group said that without someone to bail them out, executives have said this, then they're done in 12 to 14 months. And thus the reason for Mitsubishi, Honda, and Nissan potentially joining together, where Honda would be really the one in power. So will this happen in Europe? Will more consolidation be needed? Will bailouts be needed by the German government or the French government? Absolutely. Next year will be, well, a tough year for them all. but it's only going to get worse after that. Remember, a few years ago, only 1% of the world's vehicles that were being bought were from China. 1%. That was about 10 years ago. Now, that has hit 40%. The change is happening fast. China was the fourth largest exporter of cars a couple of years ago. It's now the first. And that is not trending in the reverse anytime soon. European car manufacturers are facing failing sales in China, the decline in their gravy trains. They're making billions and billions of dollars in China for many years, and all of that has basically ended. That means they have really no way out. In Europe, the cost to make a car is so much higher than China that these automakers are going to continue to struggle. And I don't see what the solution here is. If you do, please let me know what you think it is in the comments.